Hi everybody, this is Valley Tokenized with Masha and Xenia, and our today's guest is special because we interviewed him a year ago, one of the first interviews that we did, so we're super excited to have Luka Gubo today with us of Bloctrade. Luka, maybe you can start by telling a couple of words about yourself for those who are not familiar with what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be back. Good job with all the things that you're doing. I'm Luka Gubo. I'm the CEO at Bloctrade. My background has been in high-frequency trading and always at the intersection of trading and technology. And with Bloctrade, we are trying to disrupt European capital markets by basically having the latest technologies implemented, which of course includes blockchain, meaning that we will also try to facilitate STOs for others and enable liquidity for investors on the secondary market, which of course means that we need to be a licensed investment firm, but we can discuss that in the following minutes.
And so there are pretty much a lot of announcements of security token exchanges that are currently either in development from big players, from smaller players, from startups. And how is Bloctrade different from the rest of them? And maybe how you intend to cooperate with other exchanges to create this worldwide ecosystem?
Yeah, this is definitely something that needs to be an ecosystem. Whoever is trying to launch a security token exchange has to have a so-called investment firm license, which operates a so-called multilateral trading facility. Or they can go for a full-fledged stock exchange, which is then under MiFID II defined as a so-called regulated market. But yeah, there has been a lot of announcements in the past 2 years, basically, and especially recently. And how we are different is that we have started quite early, that I guess we are one of the first and hopefully will be one of the first in Europe to be finally approved by regulators. And definitely what is important here that is we are working with other players in the capital markets. So if you take a look, let's say, at one of the largest crypto exchanges like Binance and all the other players, they are basically in one entity. You have an exchange, you have a broker, you have a custodian, then you have a broker who is doing let's say they're doing initial exchange offering, which is basically placement of financial instruments. So everything, although everybody's talking about decentralization, if you take a perspective from the risk side, you see that this is kind of highly risky because they provide all the services that individual players in the capital market has. Basically, everybody's doing their own part. So what we are doing is to be focused on the exchange part, on the MTF part, and the brokerage part, while operating together with investment banks and traditional banks on the placement and the custody. And of course, what is crucial in Europe, at least, is that you have a so-called central security depository. So this is something where basically financial instruments and securities are written in a so-called book entry form. And if you want to have a secondary market for that, for any security token, you need to have a CSD in place. So I'm really proud that we are working with a couple of them and will be integrated with them just to enable the secondary market also.
And talking about joining forces, and also what has changed from the last time we spoke, you're now a part of a bigger Cryptix group. What has changed since then, since you joined Cryptix, and how is your collaboration processing?
Yeah, it's definitely good to be part of something bigger, especially because we share the vision. When Bernhard Koch, who is the founder and CEO of Cryptix, is talking about what Cryptix as a group is doing, he always mentioned this financial marketplace where Bloctrade is part of the capital market, basically supplying services on the primary market for the STOs, which is something that we kind of extended. It wasn't our main goal previously last year when we talked, but now is definitely also part of the focus. And by being part of the larger group, this also means that we have additional resources available, not only financial, but also larger team, just being part of the larger ecosystem, and especially with user onboarding and getting additional clients. This is something that is much easier by being a part of a larger group. Yeah.
And talking about security token offerings, basically you are also empowered to provide the security token offering services to other companies. And there were talks about you planning your own STO. Can you share more information how you handle this both for your clients and for yourself?
Yeah, for the clients, we'll be able to offer the service after we acquire the license. So as an investment firm, part of the license is also placement of financial instruments, meaning that you have an issuer who issues a security token or whatever financial instruments they wish, and then as a broker, you can place this financial instrument to the public if it's a prospectus, or to private investors if there's some kind of an exemption from the prospectus. And yes, we are doing our own STO because we want to showcase how it's done properly. We have written basically the prospectus. It will be reviewed by one of the big four auditing companies, and then sent to FMA for basically approval, and then also passported across Europe, so that it's basically anybody from Europe could potentially invest. But we have entered also into a great partnership with Elite Club, and Elite Club is basically a network of high net worth individuals, which is a perfect target group for us, because also when we'll be doing other STOs for companies that want to use our services, we need to have the demand side ready. The supply side of STO is quite large. Everybody who is doing any kind of project, a startup, everybody likes to get some funding usually, and of course the supply side is quite significantly large, but the demand side is always problematic because you have to find investors. And by basically doing first our own STO and having these partnerships in place, we can take care of the demand side, so that not only that we raise some amount of money, which means that we'll be able to expand across Europe, but also to have basically investors ready for other offerings that will be done through us.
I think probably a question that is also closely connected to the STO campaign, and maybe the question that interests everybody the most, is the licensing process that you're undergoing. You mentioned that you were one of the first ones to launch this process, and hopefully the first ones to acquire this kind of license. So how the things are going here?
Yeah, it's really hard to comment on the whole licensing procedure. It's been a tough and volatile ride, just because there's 30,000 pages of MiFID II. This is a regulation governing secondary and primary markets in Europe, but it's not the only regulation. So there's also then the CSDR and the Prospectus Directive and regulations and Transparency Directive, and there's quite a few of those. And we had to prepare all the documents, which is not an easy task, but then you have to refine them to basically all the technical solutions that we have built have to be in compliance with the internal rules and regulations, which are of course in compliance with capital markets regulation across Europe. And of course, with extending also to the primary market services, we had to add those policies additionally. We've been in touch with FMA, Financial Market Authority, for quite a while now, and they have been very supportive, but the process of course takes a while, and so yeah, we are proud to also have one of the best auditing company helping us out with basically preparing the statement for the regulator. So hopefully this should come to an end soon, meaning that the license should be with us. But of course, the timeline here is uncertain, just because the regulators have their time to do the final check, to provide feedback, and then the timeline can be additionally extended if they say, okay, you need to adjust something or add something. But I guess because this is quite a hard process to go through, and everybody who is talking about launching their own security token exchange, yeah, from the technical perspective, it's not such a big deal. But from the regulatory perspective, it's quite an enterprise that you have to run and basically enable all the processes and have all the key persons in place and so on. So, yeah, looking forward to an exciting 2020. I guess it will be exciting, but for the true liquidity to be there for security tokens, it's not just about the license, but as mentioned, it's also about the demand side from investors, and basically having everybody understand that these are still the same securities, just the technology is much better.
And from the moment when the license is approved and acquired, how long it will take until you can list the first security tokens, or it will go just instantly?
In theory, it can go instantly, but I guess there will be some back and forth additionally with the regulators, also because of the reporting itself, because we have to then, every transaction and every listing has to be reported to FMA and ESMA. But yeah, we will definitely have everything in place and ready to start listing also other security tokens on the exchange itself.
But still, do you have any approximate dates in your mind? Like, it's clear that you can't predict what is going to happen with the license, how long it will take. But what are your key milestones for 2020? What other things you're planning to achieve this year?
Yeah, so definitely one of the milestones is to have the application fully ready, which means that to have the audit report and to have all the policies and everything in such a format that is suitable for FMA. So this is going to be done quite soon. Won't mention dates, but yeah, we're almost there. And of course, the additional milestone is the offering itself, meaning our own STO, where we'll be offering basically so-called participation shares, traditional shares just without the voting rights, to number of European investors. So these are the two definitely important milestones for us.
And you mentioned that it's very important that companies that want to fundraise this way understand that these are normal securities and that investors understand that these are traditional securities. But at this point, a lot of people who start looking into into fundraising with security token offering, they start to feel uncomfortable about the amount of documentation and time that is needed. So what would be your advice to these companies, what they should look at and how to simplify this whole process?
Yeah, last year, basically prospectus regulation came into force across Europe, so it's much easier now to prepare the prospectus. Previously, it was kind of 200 pages document and quite an effort to produce. But now with the prospectus regulation, it's much easier because the outline is clearly defined. You just need to kind of answer the questions that ESMA has put in their guidelines. So this is something that we'll also provide as a service to companies if they would like to do an basically STO itself with the prospectus, but companies can do it themselves if they have somebody who has kind of a law degree or is a lawyer specialized in the capital markets. I know this is something quite hard especially for startups, and to be honest, clear startups might not be kind of the perfect subset of companies for a public offering as such. Of course, the idea is always, you can invest in the next Apple when it was like just a small startup. But to be honest, the percentage of the startups that actually fail, and also the additional capital that is usually required by startups makes them not really the best company to issue an STO. So kind of the best would be that the company has some revenue, has proven itself. Founders usually talk about the product market fit. So if this is achieved, then STOs and especially public offerings with a prospectus, then this is definitely a way to go.
Mm-hmm. And not many people know about this, but there is a European Commission initiative that is aimed at creating new jobs and promoting the market to make it more robust. And can you tell us if the companies in the digital securities space, and including Bloctrade, are participating in this? And what do you think will be the impact of this program on this infrastructure on the whole?
Mm-hmm. So there are quite a few initiatives. The whole prospectus regulations, as a regulation by European Commission, was part of that. But then there's not sure how the law is called, but it's related to venture capital. So also venture capital funds can get additional funding from Europe, basically to co-invest in touch with basically some people directly from European Commission, because everybody likes to talk about interesting projects and people who are involved in those. But currently we are not directly part of any of those.
Mm-hmm. Luka, and this would probably be our last questions, though I'm pretty sure that we would find a lot more to talk about. But as we covered pretty much everything, you once said that STOs are the new wave of IPOs. Do you really believe that blockchain will be the underlying technology of all capital markets and that all securities will eventually be issued on blockchain, and when we will see that happen?
Yeah, our goal is to basically tokenize or put on the blockchain 100,000 European companies, and there's about 25 million of those across Europe. So on the public markets, on existing capital market infrastructure, there is about 9,000. So definitely I fully agree and support the statements that the capital markets will be on blockchain. What is even more interesting is that now the central banks are really exploring the central bank digital currency, which is an important element if you think about settlement of securities. Meaning when the trade happens, then there's quite a sequence of events that happens after that to be able to achieve actual transfer of the securities. So if we use altogether a interoperable blockchains, this then means that we can achieve what is called real-time gross settlement, or even improve it and have some netting in place, which means that all the processes after the trade can be seamless, can be straight through processed, and the savings that happen because of that will be, we're talking about 20-30 billion per year just for all the post-trade processes that happen and the reconciliation and so on. So definitely agree, blockchain will and already is disrupting capital markets, but unfortunately because capital markets have players involved who are fully regulated, the speed of disruption is not as fast as everybody would wish for, but yeah, this is definitely happen, and we are hopefully being an important part of that.
Thank you very much, Luka. Maybe there is something like that you would like to share with our viewers. Some last word before we say goodbye for this time.
Yeah, definitely. Just as mentioned, everybody's enthusiastic about using blockchain in capital markets and everywhere else. We have to know that we are still dealing here with securities. So if a investment is in a startup, the risk of investing in startups is quite significant, and the liquidity of, let's say, a startup is even though if it's on blockchain, if it's a security token, doesn't mean that it will actually be traded. If you tokenize shares of Apple, of course they will be traded. Apple is one of the largest companies, one of the best, and everybody would be super excited to trade it. But if you tokenize a small company, especially a startup, which doesn't generate a lot of revenue, is not well known, then the liquidity is not going to be there, even though it is liquid from the perspective of the technology because it's a token on a blockchain. Still, the investor interests have to be there. And additionally, what's important from the perspective of the issuers of the companies, they have to think a bit more about the corporate governance. Everybody is talking about, this is an easy way to get some funding and so on. Might be true, but we should not forget that all the rules and laws are in place to protect smaller investors and corporate governance. So how do you behave as a company towards your investors is a crucial part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for this comment.
And thank you for the conversation. We really enjoyed it, and we hope to see you on our podcast soon. And next time we'll be discussing the just acquired license and launch.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Thanks a lot for having me again.
Thank you.
Thanks.